This week's reject is the 7th chapter of my young adult high fantasy novel, Everwell, the story of Jeff the Boy's lost year. It was rejected by Red Deer Press. I think I got rather upset over this one. Over at least one glass of wine, I got in an argument with a photo of John Diefenbaker. You think you can write a book, Johnny, and get it published? Oh, maybe you did. Oh, you wrote a bunch of books. Well, I guess since you were Prime Minister, people would just read your book. Do I need to become Prime Minister to get published? I'm a reject, you're a reject. I'm a reject, oh, oh, oh. I'm a reject, you're a reject. I'm a reject, oh, oh, oh. Chapter 7. The journey begins.
It may well be a month, dear.
Wiel whispered to his small wife.
If you make it back at all.
She was failing in her attempt to keep her concern to herself. Wiel and his wife Nictal were packing his backpack full of food and supplies for the journey ahead. Jeff was in front of the house climbing a tree, as if he were waiting on his dad to take him camping. Instead, Wiel was taking him on a journey that could cost him his life.
Well said. If I make it back at all. I may not. Give me 3 melodies before you put me in the ground. You know the ones I like. What we are setting out for is worth all our lives.
He picked up Rehan. His pride in his son showed up on his face. Rehan was 5 and already mischievous. He was already brave. Wiel's hope was a future for his children. Rehan giggled while his father swung him upside down by his feet.
I want Everwell to be better for him. It is better to have only the memory of a brave father than to have the presence of a dad who is a coward.
Wiel picked up his and Jeff's packs and took his first steps toward their uncertain future. The Smalls were meeting at the first oak.
We need to go, son of Jefferson.
Jeff hopped down the tree and walked behind his new best friend. They broke into a run to reach the oak in time. Through the noise of their running, they heard a guttural cry and stopped. They turned around and saw Nictal throwing her white apron to the trees. She ran towards Wiel, crying and screaming. She pleaded that they stop running.
We're doing the right thing.
Wiel attempted to convey to Nictal the validity of his journey again. His gentle words were knocked out of his mouth when her sturdy frame made contact with his own.
Hold me, Wiel.
Not registering a word he said, they embraced and kissed. Jeff the boy shuffled his feet, waiting for the festival of gush to end. He was accustomed to doing this when his own parents gave a rare demonstration of love. He was not interested in that kind of love, not yet. Wiel was once like Jeff. There was no female who could hold his attention for long. He lived an adventurous life in his younger years. He hadn't found someone that was worth carving out a place in the woods for. There were places to go and different people to meet. Wiel was part of the resistance. They traveled throughout Everwell, finding as many people who were different from them as possible. Their aim was unity in Everwell. Wiel was the last remaining member of the resistance. His friends were all killed by the hag. He kept his part in the resistance a secret. The only person he breathed the word of it to was a young lady he met on his return to Leuchart Woods. He told her everything. He told her he loved and missed his lost friends. He told her what they were like and what he would miss about them. She became his only comfort in a world of loss. They decided to take care of each other from that day forward. In that very same patch of wood they met and talked, he carved out a place for her. Jeff the boy and Wiel were breathing hard when they met the others at the first oak. The number of Smalls at the oak was less than the number of Smalls who said they would be there the day before. The Smalls who were present were disheartened and quiet. Jeff thought about the farewell he'd just witnessed in Wiel's home and assumed that there were similar scenes of heartache. Wiel touched the ache in his chest. Their pain held him at his own. The giant was there too. He was smiling. Wiel looked at him. He wondered what made him so happy. He wondered if he had a family. He tried to encourage the demoralized troops.
I know, brothers, I know.
A single tear escaped his eye.
How can we say we love our families if we won't fight for them? It is not enough to hide and hope someone else does something. This is not revenge. This is not pride. This is freeing our children and all we love from having to bow their head to evil.
Jeff felt a surge of excitement as Wiel's words ignited his heart.
How do we want our children to live? Like we have, with fear and compromise? Or do we want them to live like the heroes we hope to become on this journey.
Wiel looked at his friends. Their eyes blinked. They said nothing.
The hour of regret is over, my friends. Let's move out.
They were on their way to the hag's throne, to defeat the hag or die trying. They walked in silence at first, but before long someone was singing and the rest joined. There was not much to say, or much anyone wanted to say. Wiel found comfort in answering Jeff's many questions. Even after they traveled for many days, Jeff's spring of wonderings was bottomless.
Where did the hag come from?
Jeff asked Wiel.
No one knows. All we have are guesses. Some people say she is not from here, but a being from another place. Others say she was crafted in the sun holes.
What are the sun holes?
Well, at the very top of our world and the very bottom are 2 deep pits. These pits go all the way to the center of the world. The sun at the core of the earth causes a brilliant light that shines from each end. It's where our light comes from.
Where do you think she came from?
Some say, and I among them, that when the great divorce took place, there was an evil person whose heart was abnormally immoral. It was black stubborn. Its only consideration was for itself. On that day she became terrible and empty. On the outside she became everything she was on the inside. We all became something that day.
And she passed that darkness down to her kids?
No.
Wiel responded, knowing that the next answer was bound to open a dozen more questions in Jeff's curious mind.
She is one and the same. Bitterness doesn't kill like other faults. It preserves. She has been pickled in the juices of her own acidic essence.
What? You mean she doesn't die? This doesn't make my expedition any easier.
Now you see why we are scared?
Jeff was quiet for a long time before he asked his next question.
Are we doomed, Wiel?
Wiel's heart was filled with compassion for this boy, and his eyes took on their characteristic smile.
It was your heart that opened mine, child. Hope is not lost, not yet. It doesn't take killing the hag to take away her power. My father used to tell me in stories about defeating the hag. This one particular story stated that the hag possessed a bottle. The bottle contained her source. The source is how the hag was able to subdue minds, maintain incredible strength, and never die. It is her power. My father's story ended with the cryptic sequence. Spill the bottle. Bottle spilt. The hag is dead. Her final guilt. The grave is made, like butterflies, cut through the earth, where all must die. Hidden in this poem is a secret. I don't understand it, but if the contents of the bottle are spilt on the ground, I believe the hag would at last be defeated.
Where's the bottle?
Jeff the boy asked.
I don't know. Let's just get through today. We haven't even been through the darkness yet.
What's the darkness?
Wiel didn't answer. He aimed his sausage-like index finger ahead. It was like seeing night and day at the same time. Jeff and his comrades were bathed in the warm light of the sunholes, but off in the distance, the light stopped and darkness followed. The solid dark wall was as high as the sky and as far left and right as he could see. The darkness was so complete it couldn't be seen into. The Smalls tried to be brave. They walked right up to the wall of darkness and tried to peer through to the other side. Jeff was enamored with the partition. Its danger was still unknown to him.
A black line loops our world.
Wiel mumbled. After close inspection, Jeff moved his hand toward the darkness.
Don't do it!
A Small yelled. Jeff spun his head around.
Why not?
There was no answer. Wiel nodded his hesitant approval to Jeff and said,
Go ahead.
Jeff allowed his hand to complete its journey into the darkness. It disappeared. The Smalls shuddered. The giant laughed and clapped, shaking the earth. Jeff pulled his hand out again. He expected it to be severed or covered with black oil, but it was just as it was before he put it in. He flexed his fingers and waved at himself. One of the Smalls spoke up.
The story goes, through the darkness meet your doom. To the east, another tomb. So walk on west, be true, be bold. You'll find the light in a passage old.
That's convenient for the hag, isn't it? The straight line between her and us is blocked by the rumors she spread about what is in the darkness. We are at a crossroads, my friends. If we go west, it is uncertain how long it will take to get to the passage of light. The hag, no doubt, is looking for us, sniffing out our trail. If we go into the darkness, she will not be able to see us. The darkness will aid us in advantage. By walking on the edge of light and darkness, we will be just in the right place for the hag to find us. I don't ask you to be gallant. I ask you to be able. If you are able, come with me into the darkness, and we will face what we might face together. If you are able to face the possibility of the hag's wrath in the pursuit of the passage of light, then go. Find it. But my heart tells me, it implores me into the darkness.
There was a moment of silence before a gust of wind flew from within the darkness. Some Smalls ducked for cover. Jeff caught it just out of the corner of his eye. He thought it was a cannonball. Because Jeff had a deep and fast-acting imagination, he considered pirates with cannons on the other side of the darkness. Jeff expected the round object to keep on in its trajectory, but instead it stopped in midair. Was it breathing? The object was not a cannonball. It was a floating head who was having a good time by the looks of it. Its round face featured a long, silky beard and 2 fangs protruding out of its mouth. It wore a crown on its head and laughed like a madman.
What'll it be, men? Painless childbirth for your wives? A full stomach always? Or perhaps you want to know where the passage of light lies for a safe journey through the darkness?
Ignore him!
Wiel called.
Ignore who? What is that thing?
Jeff asked. The head answered for itself.
I am the wish giver of Everwell. Everyone gets one wish, so what will yours be?
Don't do it!
Wiel warned.
That thing is called Raber, and don't ask me why he doesn't have a body. He grants wishes, but trust me, you don't want him to.
Well, it isn't nice to say mean things about people you don't know. I live to serve.
Raber replied in his most sincere voice.
He's a genie.
Jeff recognized.
Yes, a genie, boy. That is what I am. I know what you want. You want to go home. You want to see your parents, your grandparents, and your best friends again. I can have you there in under a minute.
Jeff looked ahead into the darkness. This was not his world. This was not his fight. He thought about his cool bed and the sound of his parents' voices, muffled by his bedroom wall. Could this decapitated floater do anything for him, really?
Oh, I can do it.
Raber confirmed.
You want to know what your parents are doing right now? Let's see. They're playing something called Gin Rummy. Your mother is wearing a very colorful dress that your older sister bought her from India. You know it. I think they miss you, Jeff. They would choose you if you were down here, you know? Why don't you choose them? What will it be, boy? I'm allowed to ask once in your lifetime. If you say no today, you say no forever.
He's not telling you the whole story, Jeff.
Wiel warned. Jeff left his dreams and came back into the present. He looked around. The small army and the giant were sitting on the ground with their hands over their ears and their eyes closed. They were warned about Raber. They knew who he was, and they knew what his promises brought. They knew he would eventually come to them, and had been waiting their whole lives to say no to him. They planned how they would say it, the words they would choose while they were still children. Now that they saw his smooth words in action, they knew the best thing to do was ignore him until he left defeated. Wiel alerted Jeff.
Raber is a page folder. Imagine your life as a book. With your permission, he has the power to fold pages to skip past moments of your life or to tear out pages of your personal story. Raber ruins the story. He wrecks the journey. If you don't experience what you are meant to experience, you'll be off the course of your life forever, and you'll never become who you are supposed to be. Some have asked to be released from a certain hardship, but when the hardship was skipped, they lost who they would have become through the hardship. They became a fraction of their personality, living out a fraction of their purpose. His granted wishes ruin you. He always finds a way to come out on top. You won't get what you want.
Oh, don't listen to him, First Faller. I've never granted him a wish. How does he presume to know what a wish brings?
Jeff's longing for home was clouding his judgment. It was close. He could almost smell his mom's homemade gingerbread cookies. He could almost hear his father's laugh as he read the newspaper comic strips. One word, and this was all over. Everwell would be but a dream. He was supposed to be at home, wasn't he? Somehow Jeff knew Wiel was right. He knew he couldn't trust Raber. However, his resolve was slipping. He sat down, closed his eyes, and plugged his ears with his hands. Raber sighed, disappointed.
Ah, shucks. Well, there's gotta be someone here who needs something. I'll make your dreams come true.
He floated over the Smalls, circling and singing to them. Raber took notice of a specific individual, a Small who cracked a few peeks at Raber and could still hear him through his half-plugged ears. His name was Klofik. Klofik had lost his son in a tragic accident a year earlier. Klofik and his family were at a friend's home. Klofik remembered each detail as the head floated by. He was laughing at the table. His son, Stenlian, poked his father's shoulder to catch his attention. He brushed him off, telling him to wait a moment. Stenlian took 3 steps away before he collapsed on the floor. They sent for the medicine man, but Stenlian was gone before he arrived. Klofik, without reason, blamed himself. He would give almost anything to have Stenlian in his arms again. Raber spoke to Klofik while pretending to speak to everyone else.
La 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 da 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 If you have lost something, I can find it. There's nothing I can't do for you if you wish. Do you miss anything? You need not miss it any longer. Did you make a mistake? I can make it so you did not. All it takes is one little wish. Wish, wish, wish.
He did this for the remainder of the afternoon. Eventually, he pretended to leave.
If I can't help anyone, I guess I'll go.
He floated slowly away. Klofik burst to his feet, ears tearful and pleading.
Yes?
Klofik looked at Raber for no less than 6 minutes. Raber's smile was intense. He chuckled to himself, delighted in his sail. Klofik looked around at his friends for a moment. He knew that he needed to make their resolve his own. He knew he needed to follow their example. He sat down, closed his eyes, and plugged his ears with his hands. Raber knew he lost. His smile melted into a face of intense rage. In an instant, he was gone before their eyes. The Smalls joined to their feet and cheered. They won! They turned down their wildest dreams for their true story. They lifted Klofik on their shoulders and cheered for him, for they watched him suffer the loss of his son. His temptation was the greatest, and therefore so was his victory.